Hi, I'm Violet Gill, and about a week ago I finished both a neutral playthrough and a true pacifist playthrough of Undertale. And in the meantime, I've been collecting my thoughts and doing research by watching a few clips of genocide runs in order to kind of make this video discussing my thoughts about the game. So I guess I'll start by going through all of the usual praise. When I talk to other people about this game, especially people that haven't played it before, I would definitely do say that it's the best written RPG, probably the best RPG, the best indie game, even kind of the best game to have come out in quite a few years. It is definitely one of the only games that has made me cry legitimately. I don't think a game has made me cry in over a decade, and somehow playing this game managed to tick all of the right boxes for me. Just the combination of the great characters, the great story, the great writing, and the really clever gameplay kind of just cemented everything for me as this being one of the best RPGs that I've played in a really long time. But that's not entirely the reason why I made this video, because as I can kind of see by going through Tumblr and YouTube, everybody seems to be singing this game's praises, and I don't seem to see nearly enough people criticizing the faults that this game has, other than people that just legitimately didn't like the game, like went through it once or played it for about 5 minutes, got turned off because of the art style or something, and then walked away. I mean, like, actual serious discussion about problems that this game has, and probably deeper analysis, because usually the criticisms that people will throw towards this game is that the combat can get boring and tedious and all of that stuff, and if you're not into RPGs and this isn't for you and blah blah blah. But it's either that kind of criticism or just people that really like the game and have played it and know everything about it saying that it's absolutely perfect. And I don't think it is. I don't think it is at all. But I think that's also one of the things that makes it a really good game, and I think it's one of kind of Undertale's calling cards, like some of my favorite movies like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Fantastic Mr. Fox, where they were extremely flawed movies, but with one strength or two strengths that they happened to do so well that it made me love them all the more, even despite the flaws. And I think Undertale really needs to own up to this, and the community for Undertale really needs to own up to this too. And essentially, the crux of the argument is this. The part that the community will tell you is the best part of Undertale and what makes it so that everybody should play it, all of that universal appeal and all of that stuff, is essentially about, what, a third to half of the game. It's like half of the neutral run, the first start and the end of the neutral run, and then the entirety of the true pacifist run. Everything else is either flawed in some way or just really disagrees with me for one reason or another. Starting with, I guess, the genocide run, which will probably take up most of my time talking about in this video, because it kind of exemplifies everything that is wrong with Undertale. First of all, the genocide run is way too difficult, and the genocide run is way too tedious in order to complete. I understand that this is supposed to be like kind of the hardest difficulty inside Undertale, and that run that you only do if you get bored and all of that stuff, but when you're grinding all of that way like you would in a standard RPG, it kind of shows you the flaws inside the battle system, in that it's essentially you click a button a few times, then dodge a bullet hell, and you keep doing that over and over and over again. I mean, even inside the true pacifist run, it kind of got tedious in order to fight the same monster upwards to 2 or 3 times. Having to fight the monster, I think it's like, not the same, I mean, obviously it's different monsters, but I think you have to go through 21 random encounters just in the first area in order to clear that for a genocide run. Yeah, it gets tedious and boring, and it's not something that I would wish upon people. And considering that this is quite possibly a third of the game that you're supposed to experience, I mean, it's a ding against Undertale that I think a lot of people ignore. Not to mention that the bosses in that mode are significantly harder, culminating to a final boss against spoiler-free video, so I'm not going to tell you who it is, but culminating towards that final boss makes it so that it's way too difficult for you to be able to go through this run. And again, yes, you're not supposed to go through this run unless you're absolutely hardcore about the game, but it's also one of the touted features that is inside the game. People know about this genocide run, so obviously people that are not so great at games are going to try it and then get frustrated and then walk away from the game without having experienced everything. Not that I blame them. I mean, knowing what happens at the end of the genocide run kind of makes it so that you don't want to play it. And when a game doesn't makes it so that people don't want to experience a portion of the game, then I think we necessarily have to call that portion of the game flawed in some way. I know that a lot of people are going to say that this is the point of the genocide run, is its whole genre deconstruction element, that, you know, if you try and play this game like you would any other RPG with all of the grinding and all of that stuff, that it should ruin the experience for you. And first of all, if you ever say that if you play a game this way, then it should ruin its experience for you, then that's kind of entitled. But also, I think I just kind of disagree with it on a sense of principle. First of all, indie games that kind of like break down the genres that they encompass and then laugh at them or analyze them and all this stuff are kind of a dime a dozen. Like Braid did it all that time ago. Deponia, I mean, whatever. Deponia is just whatever. It's Book of Unwritten Tales. A lot of just kind of meh games, Deathspank, were kind of had that going for it and just kind of flopped because, I don't know, it's kind of on the nose. And I think while Undertale definitely goes in really cool directions with that idea, it ends up being pretty on the nose what happens at the end. I also don't entirely hate it because it's a bad ending, or at least subjectively to me a bad ending, because I think that turning the RPG thing on its head where the hardest ending to get is necessarily the best one is a pretty good thing to subvert. I get why, like, you should be able to kill everyone, and why that should be a bad thing, and why that ending should be so garbage for you to feel going through as a player. Because, you know, you just killed everyone and all that stuff. What I definitely don't agree with, and what is probably my biggest gripe with this game, is the fact that doing this run irrevocably changes your save file and your game so that all subsequent runs, especially true pacifist runs after that, give you a vastly subjectively worse ending. And I get it. It makes sense from a story perspective, but I think a lot of people forget that this game is exactly that. It's just a story. It's not Word of God. It didn't have to end like this. If Toby Fox had wanted to make it so that you could do a true reset after you finish a genocide run and make it so that everything was a-okay when you did subsequent neutral and true pacifist runs, then he could very well have done that, except he didn't. Again, for this whole genre deconstruction thing. Like, cool, you gave us some jump scares and completely ruined the story for us as a kind of a giant FU to the community, to anybody who decided to go through a genocide playthrough in order to experience everything that the game had to offer. Like, cool, you can do that. It doesn't mean that I have to respect you anymore for doing that, and it doesn't mean that I have to sit through defenses of people saying that this genocide mode is totally worth it and totally worthwhile. Because all in all, I don't think it was. I don't think it is. I still think that it's a good run, yes, if you're, like, have the patience to go through all of that tedious grinding and all of that stuff. But considering how perfect the true pacifist half of this game is, seeing this full genocide run being just kind of all over the place in what it's trying to say, well, all over the place in what it's trying to say in terms of, like, how vastly different this from the Undertale's true pacifist run, I don't know. It just kind of strikes me as weird. Don't get me wrong, I still think that this is one of the best games that has come out of the industry in a long time, but I think that in order to preserve this kind of legacy, we have to kind of keep perpetuating the fact that people are really only going to be playing half of this game. And I don't know if I want to give a perfect score to a game that you should only play half of. Even no matter how perfect that half is, I just look at this genocide run and see that there's something that I fundamentally disagree with there. And I don't know, if I had to review the game as a whole, not just that true pacifist end, I'd give it maybe an 8, maybe an 8.5, because that genocide run really shows the flaws inside Undertale. So yeah, hopefully I didn't try and ramble too much during this video, and hopefully I gave somewhat of a coherent argument. Again, this is just my opinion, so, you know, feel free to crucify me, or don't, because I assume that if you got this far, then you either agree with me or you don't care and you're just kind of listening to this on autopilot. But thanks again.